CEO invited me to lunch. Maxwell's. White tablecloths. The kind of place where people sign million-dollar deals, not where someone like me gets fired. But that's what it was. After 11 years of building Riverton Manufacturing's tech division from scratch, literally from nothing, I was being let go, replaced by the owner's nephew. These things happen, I told Preston, the CEO, smiling as if it didn't sting. But I already knew. I'd seen it coming. Hi, I'm Derek. I'm 42. And for over a decade, I was the guy behind everything tech at Riverton. Not that you'd ever know it from our website or those glossy quarterly reports. Back in the day when we were still running Windows XP and people wrote passwords on sticky notes, I built our network security from the ground up, turned a 5-person help desk into a team of 30 that supported 3 different production plants. Nonstop. Milwaukee doesn't sleep. Neither did I. Funny thing is, I wasn't even supposed to be there that long. Took the job as a temporary gig after my divorce. Something to kill time. But I got good at it, really good. And over time, those blinking servers, tangled cables, and endless status dashboards, they became mine. Not legally, sure, but in every way that counts. That lunch at Maxwell's was just confirmation. Derek, you've been invaluable, Preston said, slicing into his steak like he was reading from a script. But we're going in a different direction. We need fresh perspectives, someone with vision for where tech is heading. Translation? We found someone younger, cheaper, more obedient, and with the right last name. Harrison's nephew just finished his master's at MIT, Preston continued, beaming. Brilliant kid. Digital transformation. That's his thing. I nodded and took a sip of water. So, who's handling the transition? Relief washed over Preston's face. I wasn't going to flip the table. I wasn't going to make a scene. You'll have 6 weeks, he said quickly. We'll announce it after the quarterly all hands. Before dessert hit the table, I signed the NDA he slid across to me. I shook his hand, told him I understood. Back at my desk, I already knew what I'd find. My admin access had been quietly downgraded. I was removed from the leadership team email group. They decided this well before lunch, but I'd seen it coming months ago, and I'd been preparing. It started with something small. 3 months earlier, I noticed unusual activity in the server logs. Someone had been snooping. Access attempts from an IP address linked to the executive floor. Not random. Targeted. They were going through systems they shouldn't even know existed. My systems. Looking at my backup strategies, my protocols, my internal documentation. They weren't just replacing me. They were extracting me. I moved to Milwaukee 16 years ago. Followed my wife, Ellie. She got into grad school here. I left a pretty decent job in Minneapolis to support her. We were young, in love, thought we'd make it work. 7 years later, the marriage ended quietly. No shouting, no drama. Just a note on the kitchen counter. We want different things, it said. And just like that, the life I'd built evaporated. I was sleeping on my brother's couch when Riverton called. They'd just suffered a ransomware attack and needed someone to fix the mess. The plan was for me to stay a couple of months, patch things up, then move on. But once I got a look under the hood, I realized how much potential the place had. Their entire operation, millions of dollars in machines, hundreds of employees, was running on tech that should have been retired a decade ago. One crash could bring the whole thing down. So I pitched Preston on a 5-year overhaul. He said yes. For 3 years, I barely saw daylight. I rebuilt everything. Redesigned the network architecture, hired and trained a staff, implemented backups, built redundancies, made sure that when something broke, it didn't break everything. In 2003, when the Northeast blackout hit, we were the only plant in the region that stayed online. After that, people started noticing. Preston brought me to board meetings. My budget tripled. I got to hire my own team, people like Vanessa, who became my right hand, and Luis, who could debug blindfolded. We weren't just IT anymore. We were the engine behind Riverton's promise. On-time delivery, no excuses. At the 2019 company Christmas party, Harrison Wells, the big boss, majority owner, shook my hand. You turned us into a modern operation, he told me. We couldn't have grown without your systems. That moment felt like arrival, like maybe I finally mattered somewhere. But cracks started to show. It began subtle. Last September, some consultant showed up out of the blue, said he was auditing our digital infrastructure. He started asking me weirdly basic questions about systems I personally built. When I asked who approved the audit, he muttered something about the executive team and changed the subject. Then in November, I lost access to board meeting notes. Server cleanup, the notice said. By December, Preston was canceling our weekly briefings, always with a decent excuse. At the leadership retreat in January, I overheard Harrison chatting about his nephew's upcoming graduation. Brilliant with computers, he bragged. Silicon Valley companies fighting over him. Didn't think much of it. I should have. The nail in the coffin came when Vanessa mentioned being pulled into a strategic planning session. One I should have led. When she brought up my name, Preston had waved it off and changed topics. Something felt off, she told me. Like, they were planning around you. Still, I brushed it off. Loyal to a fault, my ex used to say. 2 days after the lunch, I found myself alone in the server room. 7 p.m. Everyone else had gone home. The soft hum of machines, it always calmed me. These servers, I knew them better than I knew most people. I ran my hand along the console. 11 years. My life was in these wires. I turned. Nathan Blake, Harrison's nephew, standing in the doorway, clean cut, designer watch. Couldn't have been more than 30. Just routine checks, I said. Need something? Getting the lay of the land, he replied, stepping in like he owned the place. Preston said you'd be showing me around soon. Did he? He wandered past the servers, studying the layout. Impressive setup. Bit old school, but solid. Old school? These systems were upgraded 8 months ago. Your documentation is thorough, he said. Been reading your protocols. I have some ideas for modernization. He said it like he was doing me a favor. Looking forward to hearing them. The words tasted like chalk. After he left, I checked the logs. His credentials were created 3 weeks before my lunch with Preston. He already had top-level admin access. He'd already been through all my documentation. This wasn't a handoff. It was a heist. I pulled out my phone and texted Luis. Coffee tomorrow. Joe's, 6:30. That night, I drove to the lake. Parked where Ellie and I used to watch sunsets. The water was black under the winter sky. I thought about the day Preston promoted me to director. You're the backbone of this place, he said. We couldn't run without you. Turns out backbones are replaceable too. Luis was already at Joe's when I got there the next morning. Dark circles under his eyes. He knew something was wrong. They're phasing me out, I said, no sugarcoating it. He nodded. I figured. They've been asking weird questions. Having me explain your systems. I didn't blame him. He had 2 kids and a mortgage. What's your plan? He asked. I didn't know I had one until that moment. But sitting there watching people rush to catch the train, something clicked into place. A kind of clarity I hadn't felt since before the divorce. They think everything's in the documentation, I said softly. Luis raised an eyebrow. But we both know it's not. He leaned in. The proprietary tools, the patches, the workarounds? I nodded. The client interface, the custom monitoring system, stuff no one else fully understands. I'm not going to sabotage anything, I said, but I'm not handing over what's mine. Luis studied me for a beat, then nodded. He got it. I need copies of everything I built, I told him, and I need to know who's still loyal. The official announcement dropped a week later during the quarterly all-hands meeting. Preston at the podium playing the charismatic CEO. Nathan standing beside him, smiling like the future. Derek has been instrumental in building our IT infrastructure, Preston said without once looking at me, and we're grateful for his contributions as we transition leadership to Nathan over the next 6 weeks. You could feel the ripple in the room. My team, the people I hired, trained, worked weekends with, looked confused, hurt. Vanessa met my eyes from across the crowd. She didn't need to say a word. I gave her the slightest nod. It's happening. After the meeting, I asked to speak with Preston and Diane from HR. Sat down in one of those sterile conference rooms with too much glass and no soul. I want to clarify something, I said. Some of the systems Nathan's inheriting weren't built during company hours. They were developed before I joined, using my own framework. Diane slid a folder toward me. Your employment agreement is clear, she said like she'd practiced it. Anything developed during your tenure is Riverton's intellectual property. I opened the folder and pointed to a paragraph. System sync, I said. I built the foundation before I joined Riverton. Licensed it to the company. Check the contract. Preston shifted in his seat. That was 10 years ago, Derek. The system has evolved. Yeah, I said, because I evolved it. Every update, every patch, built on my original code. I leaned in. I'm not trying to be difficult. I just want to be compensated fairly. That's all. Preston gave a polite CEO smile, the kind you use when you're about to ignore someone. We'll look into it. Sure you will. Next morning, my access to the dev servers was restricted. No heads up, just an automated message. Security protocol during transition periods. Nathan called a team meeting. Didn't invite me. I showed up anyway. He looked surprised but managed to fake a smile. Derek, glad you could join. We're reviewing some changes to the network architecture. I leaned against the doorframe. Which part specifically? The main production floor, he replied, confident. We're going to streamline the protocols. I kept my tone even. Those protocols prevent machine failures during peak load. They're custom designed for our equipment. Nathan didn't flinch. Modern systems don't require such complex workarounds. They're not workarounds, Vanessa cut in. They're adaptations, necessary for our setup. Derek designed them after the 2018 failure. Dead silence. Nathan's smile cracked just a bit. Then he turned to the whiteboard, trying to move on. Later that day, I got an email from legal. Riverton was now claiming full ownership of System Sync. They dug up some clause about integrated technologies. As a gesture of good faith, they offered me a $5,000 technology acquisition bonus. Slap in the face. The real betrayal came the next day. Luis texted me. Nathan's doing one-on-one evaluations with the team, asking if your systems are really needed or just overly complicated. Translation, he was deciding who to cut, fishing for disloyalty. Then I found an email in my personal account from one of our suppliers, confused about a new licensing agreement Riverton had sent them, one I'd never seen. I pulled up the document. Preston had signed a contract transferring all my custom integrations, the supplier interfaces I personally designed, to a third-party vendor. Guess who ran the vendor? Nathan's former classmate. This wasn't just a handoff. They were gutting everything I built. Worse, selling it. When I tried to log into our backup servers to retrieve my original code, I was locked out completely. Game on. That night, I called Darren Phillips, an old colleague, now a cybersecurity specialist. We met at a diner off the highway, the kind of place Preston would never set foot in. I laid it all out, the timelines, the lies, the quiet dismantling. Darren listened, then asked the one question I couldn't answer. Why now? The company's doing well, so why push you out? I don't know, I admitted. Let me dig a little, he offered. Strictly above board. Just sniff around. 2 nights later, Darren called, 11 p.m. You need to see this, he said. Turns out Riverton was preparing for an acquisition. TechCore Industries, a massive conglomerate out of Boston, was in advanced talks to buy them out. The deal hinged on 2 things: proof of modern tech infrastructure and clean transitional leadership. They're cleaning house, Darren explained, polishing things up for the buyers. My systems, my work, were a key selling point. System Sync in particular was listed by name in TechCore's internal valuation reports. Then came the kicker. Harrison Wells cashed out most of his shares last quarter. The acquisition mainly benefits the executive team. Golden parachutes, big titles at TechCore. And me, I was just collateral. Then Darren said something that made my stomach turn. They started planning this over 6 months ago. 6 months ago, I was working overnight to fix a security breach that nearly brought the production line down. While I was killing myself for them, they were interviewing Nathan. I drove out to the old industrial park, where I first mapped out System Sync. Back when it was just sketches in a notebook. Sat in my car until sunrise, didn't cry, didn't scream, just sat there. When I got home, I went digging through old boxes, found my original external hard drive, plugged it in. There it was, the pre-Riverton System Sync code, documentation, timestamps. email chains, even one from Preston himself, asking if I'd consider integrating my tool into Riverton systems. Once things settle down, we'll formalize the IP agreement, he'd promised. I trusted him. Fool me. The next morning, Preston and Diane called me into a meeting with Nathan. We're accelerating the transition, Preston said flatly. Your last day will be next Friday. 2 weeks instead of 6? I asked. Any particular reason? Nathan has demonstrated exceptional capability, Diane chimed in smoothly. And frankly, Derek, your attitude hasn't been conducive to a smooth handover. I nodded. Got it. You'll need to complete all documentation and training by Wednesday, Nathan added. Of course, I said. And have you reviewed the system sync agreements? Preston's jaw tightened. Our legal team has determined that it belongs to Riverton. I know, I cut in. I'll have my lawyer review everything. Preston gave me the look, the warning kind. Don't make this difficult. It won't change the outcome. Maybe not, I said, standing up, but it might change the cost. That night, I met Luis in the parking lot of a grocery store. He handed me a flash drive. Everything you asked for, he said. Original code, deployment logs, keys, backups. I looked him in the eye. Why are you helping me? He didn't hesitate. Because they think we're all replaceable. I spent the weekend building my case. I documented everything. The original code, the licensing agreement, the emails, the development timeline. On Monday, I walked into the office early. Vanessa was already at her desk. You heard? She asked. I nodded. Nathan called emergency planning sessions all weekend. Tried to reverse engineer your monitoring system. How'd that go? Bad. 3 alerts from production were missed. Anyone hurt? No, but they had to shut down line 3 for 4 hours. Cost? About 40 grand, and we lost 2 orders. I stayed calm, didn't gloat. Derek, she said quietly, I think I'm next. I nodded. I suspected as much. You know too much about how things actually work. Do you trust me? I asked. Completely. I handed her a sealed envelope. If anything weird happens this week, open this. That afternoon, I met with 3 patent attorneys, filed provisional patents on the most critical parts of System Sync. Not the whole thing, just enough to assert ownership, enough to matter. Tuesday, I played the perfect employee, finished the transition docs, attended Nathan's meetings, answered questions, took notes. Meanwhile, Darren helped me set up a secure offsite server. By midnight, I'd migrated the original System Sync there, standalone, off-grid. Then I made one final change. Wednesday night. The office was quiet. Most people were long gone. But I was still there, finishing what I started. Using the credentials Luis had saved for me, I logged into 3 critical components of System Sync. Not to sabotage, just to secure what was mine. First, I added a digital signature check. From now on, any change made to the core system would trigger a license verification. Only authorized code from the original developer, me, would run. Second, I updated the software license. Gave it an expiration date, 8 days from now, the day after my last one on the job. Finally, I installed a clean path for renewal. If Riverton wanted to keep using System Sync, all they had to do was sign a licensing agreement. Nothing malicious, nothing destructive, just fair. I logged out, then I waited. Thursday, Nathan pulled me into his office. Some of the team says you've been acting off, he said, leaning back in his chair. Anything I should know about? I shrugged, just focused on wrapping things up. He nodded slowly, watching me like he was trying to read between the lines. We're changing all system credentials tomorrow after your departure. Standard procedure. Makes sense, I said. Although System Sync doesn't depend on admin access, it was built to function regardless of back-end changes. I saw it hit him, that flicker of realization, the suspicion. Was I bluffing or not? He blinked. Right. That's smart. Redundancy, I said. It's beautiful, isn't it? He tried to smile. Didn't quite land. You'll meet with legal tomorrow, he said, standing up. Final paperwork. Looking forward to it. Friday morning, I turned in my badge, signed the paperwork. Declined the goodbye lunch Nathan had arranged, a last-minute performance for appearances. Preston barely made eye contact. 11 years. reduced to a polite nod. On my way out, I called Luis. They just changed all the admin passwords, he said. Full system review starts this afternoon. Thanks for the heads up. What happens now? Now, I said, we wait. I spent the weekend at home. Didn't answer unknown numbers. Slept more than I had in weeks. Then, Monday morning, 9:17 a.m., right as the production floor hit peak operations, every single system sync terminal across Riverton's 3 facilities displayed the same message. License expired. Please contact the developer to renew. 9:20, one production line halted. 9:45, all 3 were down. By 10:30, my phone rang. Preston. What the hell did you do? He barked. I kept my voice calm. I didn't do anything. The license expired. You sabotaged us. No, I protected my work, I said. The license expired as scheduled. Check Clause 7 of the original agreement. It clearly states System Sync was licensed, not owned. Silence. I've already sent a licensing agreement to your legal team, I continued. It's simple. Recognition of my ownership, fair compensation, and a non-disclosure clause regarding my exit. This is extortion. It's business, Preston. These things happen. Adikonom. By 3 p.m., Riverton's lawyers reviewed my documentation. By 5 the agreement was signed. System Sync came back online. 3 days later, I sat across the table from the VP of Operations at TechCore Industries, the company that was buying Riverton. He slid a contract toward me. We still want Riverton, he said, but we want you to lead the technical integration, consultant role. The offer? Double what Riverton paid me. Total control over my hours, my team, my terms. And Nathan? I asked. The VP looked away, then back at me. Mr. Blake is exploring other opportunities. I signed. 2 weeks later, Lewis called. Nathan's gone, he said. No announcement, just gone. Official story? He left to pursue new ventures. The truth? 3 major clients threatened to pull contracts after system failures tied to his streamlining. Preston? He stayed on through the acquisition, but TechCore sidelined him, gave him a fancy title, an office far from any real power, and 0 influence. No team, no budget, just a nameplate. I didn't feel the victory I expected, just closure. The following month, I used my first consulting check to put a down payment on a small cabin near the lake. It's not much, just a quiet place with a deck and a view. But every morning, I sit out there with coffee and watch the sunrise. Sometimes I think about the path that brought me here. The servers, the all-nighters, the betrayals, the quiet wins, and I'm grateful. Vanessa joined my consulting team 3 months later. Then Luis. Eventually, half my old department was working with me. Not for me. Partners, equals, builders. About a year after I left, I saw Preston, downtown restaurant. He started to turn away, then stopped, walked over. You won, he said. I looked at him, really looked. The lines on his face, the tired eyes, the slight sag in his posture. It wasn't about winning, I said. It was about value, knowing what you're worth. He nodded once, then walked away. I sat there a long time, watching the city lights flicker on across the river, thinking about systems, the ones we build, the ones we break, and the ones that, if we're lucky, outlast us.